Good evening. Welcome to Mama Presents. The Maui Arts and Music Association is proud to have been there at the Greenways Bikeways Conference at the Maui Marriott. Joe Bertram has really done a great job of bringing Greenways concept to Maui. With Elizabeth Russell and the mayor and all kinds of people that were at this, I hope that you'll have a good time seeing this event, hearing a little speech by a couple of the people that were there, and understanding the great importance that this has for our island. Please enjoy this, and again, Mama Presents welcomes you to another wonderful show that's valuable, we hope, to you. Aloha.
We were talking yesterday a little about it, not failure, but just general desire to park cars and just education. Just as people talk about seawalls and other things because of erosion.
I'm Elizabeth Russell. I'm with Bikeways Maui. And I'm really happy to see you all here. This is exciting. I appreciate you all coming out on a Saturday. We're really excited about this conference. We have some really dynamite speakers here from the mainland and locally as well. I'll be introducing them in a minute. But I wanted to start with the introduction by our fearless leader, Joe Bertram. I'd like to thank Joe for being the driving force behind this effort for a long time. With good humor.
Yeah. Thank you, William. Thank you. Nice to see all these smiling faces and to be in a group of people that really already agree very much with what we're doing here. And I just wanted to basically go over why I'm here, why we're here, what we're trying to accomplish here, and what the purpose is for trying to bring Greenways to Maui. Basically, today is my birthday, so. Part of that was I got a present from my parents that they gave me a little photo album that showed basically as I was growing up here on Maui, when I was a kid, a small kid guy up into where I am now. And it showed about connections, and this is what Greenways are. It's about connecting, and not just connecting, communities to communities or us to nature, but it's connecting us with time, the past, the present, and the future. And this is what this little photo album showed. It showed us, growing up on Maui here, which it was very much an open space place. And these open spaces is what gave it such a gentle feeling. The people were gentle, the smiles were gentle. It was a very gentle place. And this is what we're trying to recreate now. What I liked was the emptiness, and it was so much of it that it was overwhelming, and it's just the incredible beauty that was framed by this open space. Well, I went around traveling as I grew up. I went around to Oahu and to the mainland, and the whole time, I always knew Maui was here, and I didn't recognize the changes that they were happening as I was growing up because it was so gradual. It was, even as it was starting to accelerate, you didn't really recognize it because it was happening while you were here. Well, I went to the mainland in '84 and came back in '87, and that was the big change. And when I came back, it was just incredible. And I'd always been kind of an apprehensive type of a witness to this so-called progress. But when I saw it, when I came back, it was like I was separated. I was no longer connected to the Maui that I had known as a child. So I went to Lower Nahiku, which is, as most folks know, it's about 9 miles outside of Hana. So it's very secluded, and it's a jungle type of a thing, and just kind of soaked in the serenity and just the peace that was there. And still knew this was going on, but didn't feel I could do anything to change that, to make it better anymore. And after 3 years there, I was, a little thing happened. I had a friend who got a condo in Kihei again. So I started coming back. And I was starting to like it again, the beaches, and I was right in the middle of it there by Kalama Park and where the Kamahoi Parks are, and it was nice. I didn't feel like Kihei anymore. I didn't feel like I was home, but it was just a fun place to be. But then something happened. Again, another one of those changes. And what this change was first in the same month, in June of 1990, the mayor, Tavares at that time, announced this creation of this north-south collector road, which was to be a 4-lane highway through the middle of Kihei. It was running parallel between Piilani Highway and the Coastal Road. So I got really angry. And then at that same time, just in that same month, National Geographic came out with their article on Greenways. And I became really inspired. So the anger was transformed into inspiration. And I just became this Greenway kind of guy. And I started telling everybody about Greenways. I told my friends, my family, and everybody was like, and it was my Greenway obsession. I started on the Kihei Community Association. They put me on the board of directors and said, you want to do something, this is the way you do it. And then subsequently, when Mayor Lingle got elected, with her very strong platform of having bikeways and bicycles as part of her administration, they appointed me to the Mayor's Advisory Committee to Bikeways. And as well, then I joined Nahalahele, which is the Statewide Trails and Access Council. And all of these groups the main thing I was doing there was talking about greenways. So, again, they do connect us, and this is the way I saw it for our past. Now, as you know, our past included horses and walking. The Alaloa is the Round the Island Trail that was utilized by the ancient Hawaiians 400 years ago to get around, and basically people walked everywhere. Horses have been a major part of our heritage. I remember even in Kihei, people were riding their horses along the beach. And of course in Makawao, people still rode their horses right into town. In fact, at a store I worked at there, one guy rode his horse right into where my cash register was. And the horse fell down and then picked everything apart, and then he took off. I thought, this is great. I like this. Horses. And of course there was the open space, which was a natural framework, which was just an overwhelming framework for what was then Maui. Now the present, the way it connects us, is that there are so many people on bikes and skates and in wheelchairs that are trying to get around now. I mean, everybody wants to get outside, and they want to be on wheels for some reason or other that aren't motorized. So at present now, we have a lot of people that are looking at recreation and transportation that's alternative to the car. And it's also part of our general plan that we create these open space corridors for recreation and transportation. And in addition to that is access. People are crying out for access right now, and it's especially along our coastline. And in the general plan, it talks about lateral access being created around the entire coastline. Now, the way it connects us, Greenways connect us with the future, is with such things as reforestation. There's quite a movement right now to reforest Maui with the native plants and fauna and flora that existed here before white man and even the Hawaiians came and changed it all. Greenways can provide those corridors that will allow these plants to reestablish themselves, that really look at reestablishing a native forest here on Maui. It also, we look forward to, in the future to ecotourism, which is growing 3 times faster than regular tourism. And so this is the way we can position ourselves for the future so we can maintain our position as one of the top tourist destinations in the world. And then it's the creation of bike pedestrian common areas. In our towns and as we're developing, we need common areas where people can see each other and be with each other, face to face, not in cars, but outside, in nature. And this is what creates that sense of community. You know, we're losing it as we're starting to box ourselves into cars and into little communities, gated communities, and so forth. We need to make sure these common areas are a part of each one of the communities that exist here on Maui and the new communities that are coming up. So, I want today's and tomorrow's kids to know Maui as I knew it, as the gentle place with gentle people and gentle smiles. And the way we can make it happen is we can just do it. It is all possible. In fact, it's all probable. Because it's in the plans, because so many different folks are working towards the same goal, it's just a matter of coordination. Now, already we have pilot projects that we're proposing in all the separate communities. We have, where the mayor wrote just this morning, the connection between Ka'anapali and Olahaina, which is through Waiakuli Park, making that a greenway, as well as North Beach up here. That JGL project up in Kahana, where they're having problems with their drainage, that greenway could address that and also allow folks to bike out of that project and down onto the coast. We're looking at across from the cannery, where they're putting in a new industrial area. That goes right up to Kahoma Stream, and that could also include a greenway that could be developed right along Kahoma Stream so kids could get down from Lahaina Luna right down to the coast without having to get on the highways. So we're starting to look at a system here. And Kihei, of course, is the north-south collector corridor and the 30 acres of county and beach reserve that's along the coast, being connected with the wetlands and all the stream beds. So that's the Kihei system that's starting to come in. We even have some landowners that are pushing us right now to try to get a plan together because they're very anxious to see this as part of their plans. In Wailuku, we're looking at Ao Stream and the way that the kids, all the new housing developments that have come along the stream there will be able to get up into the valley or down to the ocean and on their bikes or by walking or skating for that matter. And then that would hook in with the Kahalui project, which is the North Shore Greenway, which heads out to Paia along the coast, around the airport and all along the dune system right into Paia. In Paia and then up into Haiku, the new horse place that's coming in, the horse, I guess it's an equestrian center, is coming in right up at the 4th Marine Park. And they also have right at the end of Maliko Gulch, they already have that horse rodeo area. So you can use Maliko Gulch right there as a connection between the two, a natural connection that you can develop into a trail. So there's all these little sections of trails and different people working to try to make them happen. We need to coalesce this all and make it happen as a one system. So we have the community associations, the youth centers, Trial RCND, which is the Resource and Conservation District folks. We have the Community Work Day, the Alahele, the Trails and Access folks, the Equestrian Trails Association. We have the Physically Challenged folks, the developers, Maui Visitors Bureau. All these folks, we've contacted them and they've contacted us, are behind trying to make this kind of a thing happen. Now, presently there's even a bill before Tom Morrow's committee, planning committee, to create a Greenway steering committee that will guide the development of a Greenway master plan for Maui County. So we need your help on that to make sure that that goes forward. And finally, that I took this closing statement from a National Geographic article on endangered species, which I think we're looking at as even us as being an endangered species. If we don't start creating the type of communities and island that we want to see and that support us as a species, which includes, of course, open space in the natural area. And what they finished up with was that we've got to start now, that from this point forward, it is what we give back to Maui, and not what we take from it, that will make our island home a better place to live. Let's give back. Our open space is our heritage. Let's make it our legacy. Thank you very much. Mayor Lingle. And now Mayor Lingle will address you fine folks this morning. Remind you, this was Mayor Lingle's one of her major planks was Bikeways from her very start when she first started running for the mayor. And she's followed through with iced tea funds, with bike paths that have been built, using the shoulders to allow for a safe passage for bikes, and now in supporting even our Greenways. And so we've had a very strong and a very good friend in the administration, and I really want to thank her for that.
For those of you who rode over, who I rode with this morning from the cannery over here to the hotel, it was a real great ride, wasn't it? And I think everybody really enjoyed it. For me, it was sort of like any other day, actually. I was riding along, and all of a sudden this fellow was riding along next to me going, and also on Front Street, you know where the chart house is, and you know where the smokehouse is, and there's this dip in the road there, and the police should pick up these cars, and I don't think they really care about it. And I thought he was part of our ride. And we went along like this for a little while. I think Mike Baker was next to me, and Ron Bishop was there. And this guy just kept on, and I'm nodding and trying to stay on the, we're on the highway at this point. And I was trying to ride, and I thought soon he would get tired. And he kept talking to me, and then when I thanked him for his input, he just cut off from us, went across Honopi'ilani Highway, 4 lanes of traffic, and headed back the other direction. So somehow he realized that we were on this ride, that I was there, and I don't know where he was going. He came across specifically to talk. It was the funniest thing. But besides that, it really was a great ride. And not having to be so close to the automobile traffic when we went off-road was especially exciting. And we really do live in such a great place. Greenways do seem to fit so well. 5 years ago, none of us were talking about Greenways. We were talking at that time about the very simplest form of bike lanes to make moving around Maui safer if you didn't have a car. And we've come a long way since then. There are now safe roadside routes all over Maui. We can ride a bicycle safely from Wailea to Kapalua. That's 40 miles one way. That would have been hard to imagine just 10 years ago. But a group of cyclists pulled together Bikeways Maui, and they started to imagine and to lobby government. We've made so much progress since then, but still, we've only just begun the work. Just 4 years ago, I appointed a bicycle advisory committee without realizing how excited and committed this group would be. I wanted a little help just planning some bike routes, and I received that help and so much more. It also didn't hurt that one of my executive assistants, Dave DeLeon, who was on the ride with us this morning, is also an avid cyclist and advocate for Bikeways and Greenways. Well, that committee that we appointed as an advisory committee produced a plan, a 4-year plan for how Maui should proceed to build its bikeways, in what areas, and which portion should be built first. And they broke it down in a very important way. They identified those areas that were safety problems first. and we were going to really focus on that. And then they went to more of what would we want to enjoy after we addressed the safety issues. And that plan was formalized and sent to the county council, and the county council adopted it as the official Bikeways plan of the county of Maui. Coinciding with the adoption of that plan was strictly coincidental. We had no idea that the federal government would begin this iced tea program and come up with these funds for alternatives to cars on the road. So here we were, we just lucked out, honestly. We had this plan, and we asked the feds, would you accept this as the plan? And they said yes. And I think in the first year we got, I don't know, $1.5 million or $2 million, and the next year another $2 million. It all came out of this citizen design plan. We didn't hire fancy consultants, although I see some of them here in the room today. and we're glad to have them. But imagine multi-million-dollar grants from the federal government, all out of this plan that was citizen-initiated and citizen-accomplished. They also, this advisory committee that we thought would just help out a little bit, they successfully lobbied to reform our county code as it related to bikes. They made it easier to register bikes in Maui County, and through their recommendations, by making it easier to register, we have quadrupled the revenue in the Bikeway Fund here in Maui County. And of course, they've helped us to get our successful Bike Ed program off the ground and into Maui schools. All that happened because of a little imagination and a willingness to work hard on the part of that committee. I never heard the term Greenway until about 4 years ago. Joe Bertram introduced us to the idea, and then he just kept talking about it until we listened. Elizabeth Russell picked up the theme, and I can picture her in my office talking about this, Greenways. And then the whole committee joined in on this idea of Greenways, and the next thing we knew, we started planning for the North Shore Greenway, that off-road route between Kahului and Paia. And that's really the way our form of government is supposed to work. We can't do it by ourselves. We don't have all the knowledge of all the different areas or the expertise. In fact, most ideas of the government come from the community. Maui is our home, and how it evolves, as Joe said, is up to all of us. We're in this together. No one is going to come to Maui and help us to create a great community, but we are fortunate to have the numbers of committed and unselfish citizens. Maui County truly has a special relationship with our residents. I hear this around the state from leaders in all types of fields, and one area I hear about it is in bicycle planning and advocacy. I'd like to introduce some of the members of our Bicycle Advisory Committee who are here today. Walter Enomoto, standing in the back, who has given us tremendous energy. Ray Glauser is here today. Ray. Ray Matassi, also coming tonight. Phil Frampton. Phil. And of course, Joe Bertram. And Elizabeth Russell is member emeritus. My executive assistant, Dave DeLeon, calls Joe Bertram the Johnny Appleseed of Maui Greenways. And he has been that kind of dedicated advocate. This group has proven it has the right combination of idea guys, like Joe said, he's a Greenway type of guy. We have idea guys and they're doers. We have zealots and we have pragmatists on the committee. And you need that combination in order to move anything of import forward, Joe. We've come a long way over the last few years and we're proud of our successes, but we have a long way to go. Greenways are an idea whose time has come. How far they will go on Maui is pretty much up to all of you. I don't imagine it would be at the top of the list of politicians as an issue to push on a day-to-day basis. So whether or not this is successful is very much going to depend on you keeping it in the forefront and keeping it an issue, because there are so many competing issues out there. But that's why we're here today. My message to you, Joe and others, is to keep up the good work. Maui County government will attempt to keep up with your imagination and your desire for this. We are dedicated to making Maui the greatest place in Hawaii. And as I look around the room, and I hope later on all these people will be introduced, but of course we have two council members with us today. Councilmember Tom Morrow from the Planning Committee. And Councilmember Arakawa, who heads Parks and Recreation Committee. And we have Mr. Whitford, and we have Kathy Smith from the Kealia Federal Wildlife Committee. There are all sorts of people. We have, as was mentioned, Community Work Day. Our Director of Parks and Recreation, Charmaine Tavares, is here today. And since she didn't ride in the bike ride, and I did, she's going to sit here for the conference, and I'm going to go. So good luck to you all today, and I really appreciate being included in the program and being included at the beginning of what I think will be something very important for us in the long term. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you.
Bob Zerns, Urban Edges, a Greenway designer who was one of the planners of the Platte River Greenway, which is the Greenway probably that got Joe interested in this whole concept that was featured in that National Geographic article. And he's here from Colorado. And our friend Charlie Gandy, who's been here in the past, is with the Bicycle Federation of America. Is an enthusiastic advocate of all this stuff. So we're really happy to have them both. Charlie's going to open, and he's going to be going over what citizens can do, and folks like us as advocates to make this happen. And then we're going to have a short break and then go on with Bob, who is going to do a slideshow and wow us like he did the folks in the planning conference room yesterday with possibilities. And then we're going to have a game. So we've actually got a really fun program planned for you, and I'm really glad you're all here. So without further ado, let me introduce Charlie Gandy.
Hi. It is good to be here and to be among friends. This is my 28th trip to Maui, at least mentally. Maybe my second physical trip. And I love it. And I plan to come back actually in August to vacation to see if I can hike down Haleakala to Hana. And I think I intend on Sunday or Monday, although Bob is trying to discourage me, to ride my bike up Haleakala. But I'm going to stay out of the way of those herds of bicyclists coming down. I'm from Texas, and which is very much like Maui. You have cactus here. You have cowboys. You've got country music. It's a unique place, isn't it? Like Texas. It's a very unique place, and that provides unique opportunities. And it's an exciting place, because like Texas, there's a whole lot going on. And a lot of it has to do from a greenway, bicycle, pedestrian access perspective. The catalysts are in this room, and it's really fun to work with them because they're enthusiastic, they're creative, they're very talented people, and they are truly, thank you, they are truly 4 months and 6 days. And I'm taking it one day at a time. And I appreciate your support on that. In spite of that, I spent a whole lot of time traveling around the country helping people to organize themselves and learning to advocate and to understand the political process and to be players in that process, because what we're talking about here is absolutely a political process. There are limited resources available for you here and for everybody else, and those that have their political act together generally are successful, and those that don't are frustrated. And so the opportunity is to achieve some level of political sophistication to accomplish your dreams and your visions. And there are absolute do's and don'ts associated with that we'll talk about today. There are some ways to do that, and then there's lots of mistakes that can be made. What I want to do is just share with you some of a couple of success stories around the country, talk about the notion of when you advocate, organize, and to be politically successful, and then discuss some of the next steps that you might take here on Maui to be successful in moving the agenda along. Let me tell you some examples from around the country, first of all. Minneapolis, we met, by the way, we met with professionals yesterday with the County of Maui and consultants and interested folks where we told some of these stories, and they're responsive to this stuff. Those of you that come in with the notion that this is either a foreign concept or something that you're going to be told no to, ought to reconsider that perspective, because they are taking the lead of the mayor and other elected officials and are saying that this is a new day. We haven't done this in the past in Maui, but that's okay. We're going to do it today, and we're going to do it into the future. And they're looking to citizens to help them establish that agenda, obviously. That is going on around the country. In Minneapolis, a group of citizens saw an abandoned rail yard in the downtown portion of Minneapolis. They decided to just simply convert that abandoned rail yard, that blight on their community, into an urban park. They created an organization called Save Cedar Lake Park. They'd already named the park Cedar Lake Park, and they were going to save it. They organized people, they organized money, they took their vision and packaged it in such a way that they could present it then to the city council and to the Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board. They solved the problems that they could see and made compromises along the way. And that project, 3 years later, is not only successful, but it has given them the momentum and the energy and the excitement and the confidence to go to phase 2 of Save Cedar Lake Park, which is, you have this abandoned rail yard here with these rail lines going off in all different directions that were also abandoned. They're taking those rail lines and converting those into linear parks and connecting with suburban parks all over the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. That's visionary. That's exciting. That's uplifting. That has gotten the community excited about the whole concept of a more livable community, the opportunity for their kids to ride their bikes to and from the park without having to be chauffeured by their parents, but for adults to be able to ride across town on these trails. And Minneapolis is a lot like Maui. It snows about 500 inches a year. It's amazing how much these trails are used in the wintertime there as well, not only by bicyclists and pedestrians, but cross-country skiers, interestingly enough. In Anchorage, Alaska, there's a thing called the Coastal Trail. It's a 12-mile long trail that looks very much like what a trail would look like if it was along the harbor, because it's along a very scenic riverfront around Anchorage. They've achieved that in the last couple of years, partially because they got the mayor involved in a big way. They had some landowners that were resistant to and were creating roadblocks or trail blocks on this vision. But by getting the mayor involved, he was able to use his position to influence those landowners and to get past those objections. Consequently now, not only is that trail develop the same kind of vision for the state of Alaska as we did in Anchorage, because it works. Because that's where people are. That's where the economic development agenda is right now. There's a poll right here. I've got copies of it if you'd like. That talks about in the 1990s, home buyers. The number one thing on their agenda is trails, greenways, and slow, safe streets. It used to be golf courses and tennis courts. But now people are looking for this kind of amenity in their community. And they're buying homes. That's one of the decisions they make when they choose to purchase a home. That's 800 home buyers surveyed nationwide. And I don't know about Hawaii, but in many parts of the country now, when you listen to the ads for that subdivisions put on television, radio, and in newspapers, they're selling trails and access to the trails. It's part of their marketing. And interestingly enough, they are very sensitive to the market. A lot of communities, a lot of municipalities are lagging behind that. They haven't heard that message yet. That's part of our opportunity, is to let them know that's where the real estate market is. If you want to sell houses, that's one of the things you ought to provide. Houston. Houston's in Texas. Texas is a small southern state in the middle of the country. They've just created a $98 million trail plan for the city. Has anybody been to Houston? It doesn't look like Maui. Houston is a desperate place. They had a public hearing there about 4 years ago where they were thinking about, the Department of Transportation was thinking about taking the loop around Houston, the highway loop, and growing it from 8 lanes to 12 lanes. Citizens showed up and said, "You're crazy. This is nuts. We got to find a better way." And interestingly enough, the mayor was there, and he listened to that, and he agreed. Now, they're not expanding that. What they're doing is looking for other ways to solve their congestion problems. And one of those is trails. They've got a good system of bayous around Houston that serves drainage for when it rains, but 98% of the time, they make excellent greenways. Lastly, in this little section, let me tell you about a community closer to your home, who about a year ago decided that they were going to change from concept to implementation, a vision that a lot of people in their community had. They decided that they wanted to take and create a trail system throughout their community. They held a public meeting, had about this many people in the room, and put lines on maps and prioritized and decided this is what our system is going to look like. And then they took that, consequently they took it to the appropriate level of government, and they have a commitment from that government to achieve their vision. Now that community is Waimea on the Big Island of Hawaii. They had a session like this, decided what they wanted to do, packaged it, got community support for it, took it to the county council. The county council has committed to phase 1 of 4 phases of this trails plan, found $120,000 in their budget, and I assure you, going into that, they had been told that they didn't have any money for this. But because the citizens did their job and did it well, the county found the money to do a $650,000 total phase 1, and the county's portion of that's 20% or $120 grand. And it's happening. It's in place now, and it's going to be a good success story. This is happening everywhere. Ron Riley has a lot to do with that. He's sitting here in the audience today. He also told me that, and I think Ron can embellish this better than I can. Apparently, the state DOTs, as part of their long-range plan, advice. Take charge of this agenda and be aggressive about it. It's absolutely essential that you break out of the pack of all those organizations and groups that have good intentions but don't have good plans and are not pursuing those plans and following through on those plans. Make yourself relevant to them. They operate in a political world of winners and losers. Decide you're going to be a winner. Margaret Mead's quote, you've all heard it, I'm sure, but it's important to state here. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. In fact, that's all that ever has. It's also important to say, what are we going to do in the next 6 months? What portion of this vision are we going to achieve in the next 6 months? Not year, not 2 years, 6 months. Volunteers, interestingly enough, can commit to 6 months. 6 months is a threshold that for some reason people are readily willing to commit to. Please don't give up. This is a project that is absolutely healthy for this community. It's visionary, and it will have positive benefits that go far beyond what we see today. Thank you very much.
All this stuff is out there.
No, I'm going to take that over because Mike is overloaded, okay? You have to have somebody to say, look, I've got the guy. He's going to get local people to play.
So if sometimes I don't remember today.
Will lead us through the next portion of our program where we actually talk about creating Greenways, and Bob Stearns wrote the book Greenways and a Trail User's Guide for the 21st Century, and I actually ordered a book from him. I never paid for it, but
All right.
but he sent it anyway. So welcome, Bob Stearns. Okay.
Thank you. Actually, Joe took me down to Kihei, and I kind of got some of that same feeling that he has about some of the changes taking place. I've seen some of that happen in my homeland of Colorado as well with the growth that's taking place. The other thing we did is Charlie and I took a ride up along the North Shore along that winding hairpin turn road. And after about 30 hairpins, I threw up. But that's not important. I do have a flashback of that nausea. But since George Bush made it acceptable to throw up, okay. But that's not what's important about that tour. As I drove along that road, as we were winding, looking at the coast and the beautiful scenery, and kind of away from the development, we stopped at a little roadside stand that had some mango and some banana lumpia served to us by the Mendez sisters, who are 2 young women that run this little stand. And we were standing there, and they proceeded to tell us how they had been offered $50 million, at least their father and grandfather had, for the property, and had decided not to sell. And right at that moment, it all came together. I think I got a little hint of that special feeling, just a little hint, because I didn't grow up here, of what Joe is talking about what a special place this is. And maybe it's the turns and the nausea that are still protecting that area. And that might be part of the challenge that we're facing is how do we protect areas by going beyond the turns and the nausea to do it. And I'd like to talk a little bit today about the concept of greenways, what they are, where they came from, and where they're going, and to see how they might possibly apply here. And I'm going to do that with some slides. I won't steal it. Let's see. Is there some way to maybe you can losing and how we've been losing much of our riparian space, and nationwide we lose 10,000 acres of wetland a day. We now have 900 species on the threatened and endangered species list as well. We see a lot of this too, as we see economic and population pressures expanding development into areas where they may not really be appropriate for that kind of think we're also losing in intimacy with nature, with the resources that are around us, as we see our rivers and streams sacrificed for development and other more utilitarian objectives. This is one of my favorite stream conversions. This is actually in England. This is the ultimate solution for a drainage way. Scary. And we also see issues of contamination. We see a cost, I think, to our infrastructure, our natural infrastructure that we're losing. And I think what chills me the most about all of this is what my colleague Robert Pyle calls the extinction of experience. That we're losing, again, that intimacy with nature close at hand, and that our experiences with nature are becoming increasingly contrived, whether it's an interpretive center or it's a park or something that's controlled. We have less and less places where a kid can just go down and catch a lizard or experience something right in his or her own backyard. And so, and finding solace too, finding those places of escape to heal the mind and the spirit. I think we're losing that as well. Well, I think this phenomenon goes back a few years, in fact, maybe a century or so, as urbanization began to spread across Europe and in America. I think the first response to it was to try and create beautiful green places within the city. And initially, they were the formal parkways or boulevards. This is one in Moscow, Russia, that Catherine the Great decreed that circles the city. And Paris had them, and many other cities. And then that tradition came over to the United States by the Olmsted, Frederick Law Olmsted, and his nephews and his children as well, and the legacy of parkways that they left in many American cities. Green spaces that connect together other green spaces within the city. And that, to me, was the first generation of greenways that evolved from, well, really the late 1800s until about 1960. In the 1960s, we began to see the domination of the automobile, and I think we began to react to it. And I think one of the things that grew out of that was the creation of trails, of bikeways, of alternative ways, non-motorized ways, to move through the urban environment. And we also saw trails along rivers. We saw rail lines being converted to trails through the Rails to Trails movement. The beauty of these corridors is that many times rail and riverways are grade separated from street traffic, so you can kind of go under or over rather than have to be dealing with streets. And as a comment was made to me earlier about the notion of just stepping a few feet down into a river channel or down onto a shoreline, you get away from the noise of the urban area that might only be 15 or 20 feet away, yet when you step down into it, it's a totally different experience. And these corridors can also serve the function of rafting corridors. They can be places to restore and recall our history, because much of our development occurred along rail lines and along riverways and along shorelines. And so they're places of historic interest. And they get pretty heavily used. Actually, this is when the Pope came to Denver, but we have some days. We have some days where our trails are very popular. And as you know, you build it, and indeed people will come. The beauty of greenways is they're a very efficient way to use scarce space in urban areas. If you have a traditional lump of open space that's rectilinear in shape, thank you for the focus, you might have a unit that's 3 units on a side, which gives you 9 units of area, maybe say 9 square miles of area for 3 miles on a side. But if you stretch out that same land area into a linear corridor, you get, for that same 9 square miles, 37 miles of edge. That's more than 4 times, in fact, the amount of edge exposure where people in the community can abut this corridor, can experience it. And also, it seems like much more space when you move through it in a linear manner. And in fact, if you had an area the size of Yellowstone National Park and you were to extend it out along I-80, to make I-80 a greenway, it would be a mile long and 3,000, or a mile wide and 3,000 miles long with 6,000 miles of edge. And if you're in the middle of that thing, you'd think you were in the wilderness. so greenways can just mathematically be a really interesting way to maximize the use and enjoyment and benefit of landscape. Anyway, that was the second stage of greenways, these linear parks with trails. And the focus was mainly trails and park and recreation use. As we moved into the 70s and 80s, we began to see increasing destruction of our natural habitat, channelization of streams, and the degradation of our environment. And like most things that are destructive in this nature, there was a backlash. People began to react. They began to say, we need to protect these places. They're important. They're part of our heritage. And as Joe said, we want them to be a part of our legacy. And so I think what emerged is a new consciousness, a new sensitivity to wildlife that is disappearing. Now, this boy isn't responsible for the disappearance of frogs, but they are, by the way, disappearing at an alarming rate. And they may be the canaries in the mine shaft. And so we developed what I like to call multi-objective greenways. Greenways that are recreational, but they also serve other functions for wildlife habitat and those kinds of benefits. We have more of a sensitivity to the edge, creating places where people can get down to them instead of being isolated. Here's another good example where we can begin to buffer those edges too and provide a sense of separation. And this kind of illustrates that concept, as you can see here, where we have the urban areas and then we have areas that separate. And developers, I think, are beginning to pick up this theme as well. Providing these things as amenities, as Charlie mentioned, they are places and spaces that people will actually pay extra for. We also see these greenways as ways to link together habitat, islands of habitat. And you can almost begin to picture Maui if you begin to see these shapes in the natural areas and ways to tie them together as corridors of circulation and connection for wildlife species. They're places for interpretation and outdoor environmental education. And this is this fish observatory. This is actually an underwater fish observatory in Boulder, which I think picks up that theme as well. It's a place for people to get involved in the community, to learn the sense of stewardship. So these can become ongoing, permanent kinds of places. What if every school adopted a greenway and used it as an outdoor lab and a place to learn? It's also, I think, a value that we can pass on to the development community, that there can be those economic benefits, as I mentioned, where development doesn't just cookie cutter along a corridor, not paying any attention to the resource, but is sensitive to the resource. And by clustering development, we can save those buffer areas and those natural areas that are so valuable, because they become amenities that people will actually pay extra for. In this development here, people pay $40,000 extra to have their house face the greenway. And so there's money in it too. It's a win-win situation. I think if people can see the light, those outdoor living rooms are what people will pay for now, rather than just filling them with houses or turning them into concrete channels. They can be focal points for commercial development, quality commercial development. Here's an example where a development was built around a wetland, which used to be an undesirable area, and the status symbol there is a spotting scope in the executive offices that face the wetland. And so again, we can kind of change what might have been a liability into an asset. Another example of a wetland is landscaping for a project. And I think I see, Joe pointed out yesterday in Kihei, many opportunities to do exactly this kind of thing, to have a wetland community that can be a real asset. So there are a number of reasons to create greenways. We get environmental protection, we provide for recreation, we link origins and destinations, we have cultural and historic protection, we have an opportunity for infrastructure. Beautiful place to run fiber optic cables is along greenway corridors. In fact, it might be a way to help pay for some of those corridors. They've done that in Virginia, where the fiber optics company actually pays a royalty to the people who operate the greenway to use the right-of-way, and of course the trail is great for maintenance. Scenic preservation and buffering, which I can't stress enough here in terms of its And we have those human functions that I talked about, recreation and shaping the urban community in a new kind of way, and the cultural, education, economic, and utility and circulation benefits. And the Generation 3 Greenways also, as I say, have that habitat benefit. They're a way for animals and seeds, water, sediment, and nutrients to move up and down corridors. They can be a barrier as well, protecting some areas. Filters, wetlands are just like sponges that can trap contaminants and can even be used as a cost-effective way to treat sewage. They can be a source for the gene pool of seed and other benefits to the surrounding landscape. But some of your greenways may not have paths and still be greenways. And I think the total package needs to include both.
Okay, so now we're ready